Welcome everybody to QB Power Hour. Today is October 5th, 2017, and today's episode is Hidden and Lesser Known QuickBooks Online Features. Today's episode is an ACE course, and we'll discuss that in a second. And this course is brought to you by Michelle Long and myself, Hector Garcia. The agenda, we'll talk about QB Power Hour briefly and the host. We'll discuss the CPE process. We'll talk about the sponsors, which are the folks that help us keep this show alive. Then we'll talk about the hidden and lesser known QuickBooks Online features for about 50 minutes or so. The learning objectives are on the screen, and then the last 5 minutes we'll open it up for Q&A. QB Power Hour is a webinar series, usually twice a month or every other Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern. Next episode is going to be October 19th. We don't have the topic yet, but it will be an ACE course. It will be an ACE approved course. So both October episodes will be eligible for ACE for advanced pro advisors. On November 2nd, we'll do a deep dive with T-Sheets into scheduling and the kiosk time clock, which are kind of lesser known features on the T-Sheets world, and you will absolutely love them because actually they're actually my favorite T-Sheets features. This webinar series is typically 50% QuickBooks Online, 50% QuickBooks Desktop. We try to keep them balanced. This particular episode will be 100% QuickBooks Online, but next episode we'll try to make it QuickBooks Desktop to keep the balance going. And from time to time we'll have third-party apps, practice management tips, or other guests that can give us some insights about the accounting industry or small business related topics. Michelle Long, my co-host, is just not with us today in today's episode. She's actually on the QuickBooks Online certification tour, helping some of the folks get certified in QuickBooks Online. She's an author of several books. She's the co-host of Accounting VCon as well, and she runs the largest QuickBooks related LinkedIn group on earth called the Successful QuickBooks Consultants. So check her out. My name is Hector Garcia. I work and live in the Miami, Florida. I do mostly QuickBooks training, but I also, part of my practice is QuickBooks consulting, which is where I gather all the experience that I share with you guys today. My email's on the screen, hector@garciacpa.com. Typically, I'm pretty good at answering email questions as long as they're answerable. I've gotten some emails that are absolutely not answerable. And my Twitter handle is QBK Accounting. All right. So let's get on with the rest of the intro so we can get started. CPE, if you watch this webinar live, not the recording, you watch it live and you're logged in for at least 50 minutes and answer at least 3 of the 4 polling questions, you will get your CPE certificate via email. We are behind one episode, so within the next week or so, you're going to get both CPE certificates via email. And this episode, it's approved for ACE. So if you're an advanced QuickBooks Pro Advisor, you get 1 ACE credit. Now, some of the upcoming recommended events that we recommend that you look into, we have the Art of Value Conference, which is run by my friend Kirk Bowman in Allen, Texas, all about value pricing and delivering value. Check him out, artofvalue.com. Then the big one, QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, California. That's going to be November 15th and the 17th through the 17th of this year. If you're not registered for that and you're a QuickBooks fan, then you definitely should register for it. So you go to quickbooksconnect.com for that. And Scaling New Heights, which it's another place that both Michelle and I teach at. That's going to be next year in June of 2018. Now, one of our sponsors is T-Sheets, #1 rated app in apps.com. Create, manage, and approve timesheets from any device. Free account for accountants and pro advisors. Just go to tsheets.com/pros. If you at least don't have your free account where you can use in your own practice, you're missing out. So check them out, and a great solution for your small business clients. Arrow Workflow, it's the only workflow manager created by a QuickBooks Pro Advisor or by a bunch of QuickBooks Pro Advisors for Pro Advisors, and integrates with QuickBooks Online. So you can go to arrowworkflow.com to check them out. Great workflow solution to figure out where your tasks are, deadlines, and that sort of thing. And HopDoc, the most popular document aggregator for QuickBooks Power users. Basically, it will log into all your bank accounts and major vendors and download those bank statements, those check images, those receipts, those bills for you in one single place. And for accountants and pro advisors, you get a free account for your own practice. Hopefully you love it and add your clients to it. And to get your free account, go to hopdoc.com/QB Power Hour. All right, so let's go into the topics now. So we're gonna cover or try to cover in an hour about 12 to 14 topics, what you're seeing on the screen. We're gonna do batch undo reconciliations, reconcile adjustment report, reconcile discrepancy audit log. Those are going to be sort of one section. Then we're going to talk about the clear date on transactions, which is part of sort of the reconcile area. Then we'll briefly talk about keyboard shortcuts in QuickBooks Online. We'll talk about bookmarking, some of the functions or some of the areas within QuickBooks Online. We'll talk about the report tools tool that a lot of people don't use, but it's extremely useful. We'll talk about bookmarking reports and some of the kind of nuances around that. We'll discuss custom fields in sales forms and how to pull them out on reports. We'll talk about backing up your attachments. We'll talk about reclassifying expenses, which is a tool that's available for end users. This is different than the Reclassified tool that accountants have. So I'm going to show you where that is. That's kind of hidden in there. We'll talk about the new SmartScan feature, which is in beta test right now, but it's actually getting a lot of folks very excited. And then we'll talk about two hidden features that you actually have to know the specific URL for, which is Unbilled Expenses and Purge Company. So let's start with batch undo of reconciliation. So only the accountant user can actually undo any reconciliation. However, what's even more interesting is that the the undo reconciliation tool allows you to undo them in batch. That means that you don't have to undo last month and 2 months ago and 3 months ago in sequence. You can actually undo something from 10 months ago, and it will go ahead and, like a domino effect, undo all the reconciliation. So let me show you how that works. So we'll click on the gearbox up here in the top right of the screen, and then we'll click on Reconcile. So gear reconcile. Then in the reconciliation window, we're going to click where it says reconciliation history. So I'm going to select, let's say, for example, I'm reconciling the credit card account, just to give you an example. And then I'm going to click on my reconciliation history. And then we're going to see all of the past reconciliations done onto this account. So we see that we reconciled the last 4 months. There are no changes. Ending balance is okay. Normally, there isn't a need for you to undo a reconciliation, but there are cases on which reconciliations are done wrong, or they make some auto adjustments, or they force them, or they make up some transactions, or it's just so incredibly messy that we just don't trust them. So traditionally, with QuickBooks Desktop specifically, you would have to undo each month. But here where it says View Report, and I'm gonna click back for a second. So here where it says View Report on the right, there's a little drop-down menu that gives you the Undo button. So I can actually click Undo and undo 1 month at a time. It warns you, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And then you can hit yes, and then click Undo, and then that would undo 1 month. However, if I go all the way down to maybe, let's say, the beginning of the year, and I click on batch undo, notice that it says batch undo, not just undo. So the minute that you go down and do something further back in history, it will say batch undo, and then the warning message will say, hey, by the way, we're going to go ahead and undo 3 reconciliations. So it's letting you know that it's going to undo 3 in one shot. So we're going to click yes, and then click on, it gives you a quick preview again, and then we click undo batch. And that's basically what I wanted to show you. It's how to quickly undo a bunch of reconciliations in one shot. Now, it's not really a hidden feature, but it's an approach to it, which is what I call the reconciliation discrepancy audit log. So one of the common issues that we have, especially with end users that don't have much accounting experience, they will try to reconcile the bank. So let's say they come in here and they put the ending balance, and they'll pick a date, whatever it is, and then click on Start Reconciling, and then maybe check some things at random, or check them all, whatever it happens to be. The end user is not doing the reconciliation correctly, and then they come up with a difference. And QuickBooks actually lets you, it's hidden in here, like if they click the drop down and click Finish Now, QuickBooks will let you do it, and it says, hey, by the way, you shouldn't do this. The difference is not 0, but if your clients are like my clients, they usually say, yeah, whatever, I don't care, and then click yes anyway. And then what happens is you're creating a reconciliation discrepancy. Now, this reconciliation discrepancy will manifest itself in the profit and loss report. So I'm going to pull up a profit and loss report and just kind of show you, and you're going to see that whatever the adjustment is, it showed up under reconciliation discrepancy. Now, what some folks do, and when they're smart and slick, they will click on in here and click on the transaction, and then say, hey, you know what, my accountant kind of complained to me last time I did this, so I'm going to go ahead and hide this under something else. And they come in and they basically reclassify the transaction, let's say to office supplies or whatever. I hit save and close, and then all of a sudden they're smart because it's not showing up on the reconciliation discrepancy report anymore. Now, of course, what you're seeing on the screen here, it's a big number, and obviously it will jump at you. But if we're talking about $100, $50, $60, whatever, if that happens, we may not catch it as easily. So one of the things that are a couple of ways that you can kind of see what happened here is if you actually go into the reconciliation reports. I'm going to go to Reconcile and then go to the history button. You can actually see that there was an auto adjustment there. But I'm going to show you another way to kind of see that issue, which is actually something that not a lot of folks look at. You can actually go into the gear menu and click on Audit Log, and then we can actually click on the filter button and say, show me the events that affected transactions that were using the reconciliation discrepancy account. And then when I click on apply, what you're seeing here is actually a history of modifications made to the reconciliation discrepancy account. So that's actually a really good way to just quickly get to an audit log. And what's interesting about this is that again, it's just a couple of clicks to get there. You can print it. Unfortunately, you can't really like memorize this, so you still have to go through the motions of clicking on filter, transactions, and then reconciliation discrepancy. You're just not going to be able to get away with it, but it's a really fast way of getting to it. The other interesting thing about this is, I'm going to go into here real quick, is that in some cases the customer is not smart enough, let's call it that, to go into the memo section and delete that. So there's also the reconciliation adjustment memo that sits there. So another way to kind of find that is to go into the search menu, and then I'm going to go ahead and search all transaction lines, and I'm going to search memo, and then I'll paste that in there, and then I click on search, and that will find the transactions that have the text reconcile adjustment, which is automatically created by the reconciliation discrepancy transaction. So there's two ways to just quickly find potential reconciliation adjustments other than hitting the reconcile screen. Now, another way to go around it that people have suggested before is, hey, can we pull a report that searches that within the memo? And the answer is yes, that can be done as well. But another basically one of the ways we do it mostly is we'll pull up a profit and loss report, and let me just click on all for a second here, and then I'm going to select all rows. I want to see all the rows, and then I'm going to go into my reconciliation discrepancy amount, and whenever that amount sits there, so I'm gonna move the office supplies one back to where it was originally. So I'm gonna put it here under reconciliation discrepancy and just show you something real quick. So let's assume the customer is not going through the motions of actually modifying the contents of that account. So, and that's most customers, by the way, they'll just do it and leave it there. What you can do is pull the report, click on the dollar amount, right? And then this particular report, which is basically a transaction detail report of all my reconciliation discrepancies, I can take this report and I can save the customization. So I can click on save customization and I can call it recon discrepancy report or something like that. And then I can, in this case, I can just save it. And then when I go into, so now this is a customized report. So when I go into reports and then click on my custom reports, I can grab this one and I can schedule it. So I can click on edit and I can basically, let's say I have a client that tends to do this quite a bit. Then basically I'm gonna click on email, and then I'm gonna repeat it, let's say in a weekly basis, and I'll email it to myself. Okay, and then what I end up doing with this is I start looking at these emails, let's say every Friday or so, and when my customers are sitting there doing reconciliation discrepancies, I'm proactively sort of being advised, by my QuickBooks file, letting me know that there's data in there, so they're probably doing this. So I can proactively call my clients and say, hey, by the way, Mr. Customer, stop doing this. You're causing problems. For whatever reason, you may want to monitor this or you may not want to monitor this. I'm just kind of showing you the options and letting you figure out whether this is useful or not for you. So that was the example of the batch undo, the discrepancy, and the adjustment report. Now I want to show you something else which new, which is clear date on the reconciliation screen. And this is, most people I think have noticed this already, but this was added fairly recent, and most people don't really understand how this works. So I'm going to show you exactly how that works. I'm going to go into the banking menu real quick, and then I'm going to show you my bank downloads. So for example, I'm going to pick a check. So we have here this check on the screen, a check 138 that downloaded through the bank on 7/10. Now, normally, you would not be entering transactions from your bank feeds into QuickBooks, especially with a check. With a check, you would write that check beforehand, maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, whatever, and then you let it clear when it downloads through QuickBooks. So I'll illustrate that for a second. So I'm going to go into check, and then I'm going to check the dollar amount again. So that's 8. Okay, so it's 863.90. So I'll copy that dollar amount so I don't forget. So I'm gonna create a check and I'm gonna date it, let's say in June. So I'm gonna date. I'll select a random vendor here, and then I'm gonna date this back in June. So that's my original check date, check 138, and whatever office supplies, and we'll put the dollar amount in there. Whoops, 863.90. Let's put it in there, 863.90. So this is the normal chain of events that happens normally. Somebody will write a check. The check would have its date, whatever date it is, the original check date, the day that it was printed, issued, whatever. The check would be created. And then once you download the information through the bank feeds, generally speaking, you will catch it matching, and you would accept that match. So you would come in here and accept the match. So we'll click on match. Now, when that happens, what QuickBooks does now is that it takes the clear date and it adds it to the transaction. So when you're reconciling, you get to see both the original date and the clear date. So let me show you how that looks like. So I click on the gearbox and click on reconcile. And then I'm going to reconcile, let's say, my bank account. I'll just pick an amount there and click on start reconciling. And then we're going to notice that all of our transactions are here. And notice that, and you can see it very clear here, we have a original transaction date and the clear date. Now, that tends to provide a lot of context when you're doing the accounting. So that could be useful to some folks, or it may not be useful to some folks. If that is just being annoying or it's too much information, you can click on the gearbox on the top right and click on clear date, and you can just get rid of it. So right now, if you don't see it, click on the gearbox and turn it on, or if you don't want it, click on the gearbox and turn it off. Okay, perfect. So let's stop to do a polling question. So let's do the next polling question, and I'll just ask you real quick. We were talking about QuickBooks Connect in a second. Just wondering whether or not you are going to QuickBooks Connect. We got literally 900 people attending this webinar live. So with 900 people attending live, we get a pretty good big sample size, and how many folks are going into QB Connect. So the polling question is going to be up for about a minute. So I'll just give you a minute to answer that, and we really would need those answers in order to get your CPE certificate. All right, let's see. I'm going to the questions now to see if there's any particular questions. Let's see. There were some issues with audio at some point, so I apologize for that. Okay, somebody says clear date column is extremely helpful. It adds some context. Perfect. That I'm absolutely right about. You're absolutely right about that. I agree with you on that. Somebody else says, "Do you feel that you're the QuickBooks police?" Yep, I do. I do feel like that sometimes. Do you have the schedule for the QuickBooks Online Certification Tour? So go to QuickBooks, go to qbtrainingevents.com, qbtrainingevents.com to see that. Let's see. Does a reconciliation discrepancy account work similar to desktop, where if you delete it after you would solve the issue, or will it be created again? So, Michelle, the reconciliation discrepancy account will be created again over and over and over every single time that you do that. So, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Let's see. Somebody says you got very sneaky clients. That's true. They're very well trained by me. Okay, yep. So that's as many questions as I can answer. Thank you for answering the polling question. It looks like about 15% said yes, they're going, or they're planning to. And out of an audience of 900 people, that's 150 people. So 150 people, if you see me in QB Connect, please say hi and tell me you like QB Power Hour, or tell me you don't like it, whatever your opinion may be. Okay, so let's go to keyboard shortcuts. And this is actually a pretty simple one. Basically, you click Control Alt question mark, and it could be yeah, it's just Control Alt question mark, and then this will basically really quick give you your company ID, which is very useful when you call QuickBooks Tech Support. So if you for whatever reason are with QuickBooks Tech Support and you want them to look into the file itself, into the QuickBooks Online file, having that company ID handy is actually much better than you giving them your email address and whatever. And then whatever you see here, it's triggered by a combination of Control Alt, or in a Mac would be Control Option. So for example, if I want to see my chart of accounts, I hit Control Alt A. If I want to see search, I do Control Alt F. So basically, I'm in the screen, hit Control Alt A, and my chart of accounts pops up. Control Alt F, and my search opens up. So there's actually a couple of quick, really interesting things, and this is pretty much all the keyboard shortcuts that there are. But the one that I really like, is very underutilized, is this save and close. That's actually one of my favorite. That's Control Alt D. So in many cases, I'm sitting there and maybe I'm on the check window and I'm done, whatever. I'm done typing whatever I wanted to type. So I'm just doing my check as I normally would. Whoops. And let's say this is $100, whatever. I hate going back here and hit save and close. So I hit Control Alt D, and that will save and close it. So I think that's an amazing keyboard shortcut, extremely underutilized. So that's as much in keyboard shortcuts. Now, report tools, it's another feature that's kind of hidden, kind of in plain sight, but a lot of folks don't take full advantage of it. So let me show you some context. When I go to reports and then click on, let's say, recommended, and pull up a balance sheet, QuickBooks will always pull up some random period by default. And a lot of folks are like, where did you change that? Now, end users, QuickBooks end users can't change that, but accountants can. So if you're an accountant, you would see that little toolbox on the top of the screen, the green line, and you click down to report tools. And then I want it, for whatever reason, let's say what I'm doing is I'm cleaning up the books for last year. So what I want is every time I pull up, for now, every time I pull up a P&L and a balance sheet, I want it to show up in cash basis and last year by default. So simply by changing it here, and by the way, it's weird, there's no save button, or it just changing it here does it. And I go back into my reports and then I pull up, for example, a balance sheet, it will automatically do last year, or a P&L automatically do last year. So as insignificant as that may seem, it does save a whole bunch of time to a lot of folks. Okay, so that's default report. Now, SmartScan. This is a new feature that was added into the labs. So to access SmartScan, you click on the gearbox first, and then you click on QuickBooks Labs, and then you go down to SmartScan your books, and make sure you turn it on. So you have to click on that little switch that says turn on, right? As soon as you see it flipped on, then you click on done. Then once it's been activated, you click on the gear menu on the top right of the screen, and then you click down to SmartScan in the tools column. Click on SmartScan, and this is a very cool tool. It has a 4 functions that work really, really well. And I'll kind of show you how they work. So for example, duplicate check numbers on the same account. So if I were to write another check, so I'm going to go write a check 138, right? So I'm going to check 138, and I'll pick whatever. I'll pick office expenses and I'll make this $26. If you remember, I already wrote check 138 before, right? So if I rate check 138 and then click save and close, QuickBooks warns you, right? It says it warns you, but again, if your clients are like my clients, people say, yeah, yeah, whatever, yes, and they don't pay attention to these. So then what ends up happening is when you go into the Smart Scan screen, this is going to quickly tell you, hey, by the way, it looks like there is one instance of a duplicate check, and when you click on take a look, it tells you exactly the check that has been duplicated. Okay, so it always gives you the sort of the oldest check as the duplicate one as a reference point. So it tells you right there and then, which potentially could be a problem. Like in some weird cases, it's not. But now the other thing is checks without a payee. So I'll show you an example. So if I were to write a check, me go into the write check window. If I were to write a check and I don't put a vendor up here in the top, if I don't put a payee, and let's say legitimately I use the right check number, so whatever, we're not worried about duplicate checks for a second, and I'll write basically a check, and again, no payee, so nothing on the payee side, and I click save and close. QuickBooks won't give you a warning; it would actually allow you to do that. So if I come in under Smart Scan, it would actually tell me. Let me just hit refresh here. No, and there it is. It tells me I found one instance of a check without a payee. When I click on take a look, it tells me exactly which is the check without the payee. So we go back and add the payee. Now, these large expenses that could be capital purchases is actually really cool. This will look into any check or credit card charge that is more than $500 that is hitting the P&L account. So there's no way to change the threshold. That would be a nice feature for you to say, well, for this particular company, 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 will be my threshold. But this just gives you a good idea. So in some cases, you go through it and look at it. Now, again, this is a beta. For whatever reason, for for whatever reason, in terms of the beta itself. Um, they didn't add the pay here. I think that would be useful, or maybe the memo would be useful for. But this is what they came up on this first version. So obviously, give into it your feedback, right? That you want to see more things in there. I really would like to see. In my opinion, I like to see the payee there. So let me go ahead and close that. And then let's take a look at the last one, which is very old checks not voided or cleared by the bank. So the rule is this says very old checks, but it doesn't really tell you what very old checks mean. So I did my test and it's 90 days. I honestly don't think 90 days is very old, but they decided that very old means 90 days. So basically, any checks that are in the system that are dated 90 days or before today, and we haven't gone through the reconciliation process, they haven't cleared the bank, they would show up on this list. So that will hopefully let you, beforehand, it will it will let you proactively maybe see that there maybe some checks are going bad. We may have to reissue them. There could be some duplicates, that sort of thing. So this Smart Scan, I mean, this first instance of it is amazing. And then here under the Want More tab, there's a couple of things you can vote on. So you can vote on duplicate bills. You can vote on possible overdue bills, payments to new vendors. You vote on that and click send my votes, and then the development team is going to figure out what the top 5 are from your votes, and then from what I understand, they're going to add these into the Smart Scan feature. So definitely check it out, and then go in there and pick the ones that seem to make the most sense for you. So that's Smart Scan feature. By the way, I'm very excited about where that's going. I mean, I think that's amazing, especially for accounting professionals that we're sitting there hitting beating our heads against the wall, trying to figure out what's wrong with our clients' accounts. So this is a good start. Now, a couple of things to tell you right off the bat: if it's an expense, like not a check, and it's missing a payee, that feature won't detect it. It has to be a check. So I think that transaction without a payee should be both for checks and expenses. So I given into it my feedback on that, and hopefully they'll act upon it as well. Okay, so let's talk about backing up all the attachments. So this is a common question I have, and I'm going to go into the attachment screens real quick. So a common question I have is, hey, what if I have a bunch of attachments? And let me just upload a couple of files here just for the sake of the exercise. So I'm going to grab a couple of files and upload them into my attachments here. So let's say, for example, I got pictures, I got receipts, I got Excel files, I got PDF files, whatever. I have a whole bunch of things sitting in my attachments area, and for whatever reason I want to have a backup of that. So maybe I want to have something for the tax year, maybe I want to have something because I'm going to close down my QuickBooks file, whatever it happens to be. So if you click on that little select all button that's up there, so it just says select all, click on that little select all, and then click on batch actions. There's a little button, again, it's not hidden, but it's kind of away from plain sight. You click on export, and this would actually, and sometimes depending on the size of how many you have, it may take a little while. This will create one single compressed zip file that contains all your attachments, and you see them here on the bottom right of my screen. And then I can back that up, I can save it, I can do whatever I want with it. So I think that's a really good thing. All right, let's see. Let me go ahead and open up another polling question for now. So let's ask you this quick polling question, and I have like a million questions. So I want to see which ones I can get to. So one of the questions that I see that is repeated over and over is, how do you get to SmartScan again? Again, the answer to that is we click on the gear menu, then we click on QuickBooks Labs, then we turn on the feature because it's on beta test right now. We turn on the feature, or we enable that feature, and then once you click done or save, you click on the gear menu again, and it should be there under the tools column. So that's how you get to the SmartScan. Okay, so a few of another person is, how do I get to the keyboard shortcuts again? That's Control Alt question mark. Control Alt question mark. How do you navigate to the attachment screen? I clicked on the gear menu, and then I clicked on attachments. So that's actually pretty good in there. Let's see. Can you batch the attachments for a specific time period? So the answer is no. You can't batch them for a specific time period, but they do show the date in the top, the uploaded date, which doesn't specifically tell you whether or not it happens to be for a tax year. So that would actually be pretty cool if you can do that, but no, not possible. Not possible. Let's see. How do you clear items that are okay in the SmartScan? You would have to actually fix them. So if you actually go in there and you change the check number to not have a duplicate, or you check the or you add the vendor name, or whatever, or clear the check or delete the check that was very old. So the way you clear the items, more or less, from that smart scan feature, from the smart scan feature, would be to actually fix the transaction. So you have to fix the transactions for that to work. Do you have to turn on smart scan for each client, or you do one for all clients? The answer is for each client. Okay, each client has smart scan, so you have to turn on for each client. Let's see. Can you print the keyboard shortcuts? No, but you can do a screenshot and then print the screenshot. Okay, so there's more questions. I can't get to all of them. So my email was on the screen, so you can email me if for whatever reason something wasn't answered. Go ahead and email me. Now I will show the results of this particular one, just because I know some folks are kind of wondering. We have 1,000 people connected to this webinar live, so 50% are already using QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Online Accountant for their own practice. So a year ago, this was probably on the 30s. 2 years ago, this was on the 20s. 3 years ago, this was on the 10, 15s. So you're starting to see at least accountants use QuickBooks Online for their own practice. It doesn't mean that they're moving all their clients to QuickBooks Online. I particularly have two of my companies in QuickBooks Online, but I haven't moved all my clients to online, just because, well, that's a whole long conversation. But a lot of them just don't fit. But you're starting to see more and more accountants at least run their own books through QuickBooks Online, which is actually pretty cool, especially because it's free. So that helps. The price is right, I guess. Okay, let's pull up the presentation again. All right, so that was back up all attachments. So let's talk about custom fields on sales forms. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and then I'm going to go ahead and create an invoice for a second. So let me go into a new invoice. Okay, and you're going to notice that on this invoice, I have 3 columns enabled here. One is called Rep, State, and Source. Now, those are not default boxes that QuickBooks has. I actually have to click on the right of the screen, click on the gear menu and actually enable my custom fields here on the right side and give them a title, rep, state, source. And you can use up to 3 custom fields on transactions, and you can do whatever you want with them. In this case, I'm using rep, state, source, because on rep I put the name of the person that sold the deal. On state I'm putting where my client is, and source is where they came from. Google, YouTube, Yellow Pages, postcards, whatever. Now in some cases you have to enable custom fields first, so that requires you to go into the gear menu, click on company settings, then click on sales, and then here where it says sales form content, you click on that, and then you have to at least enable the custom fields and what they call internal. So internal means I can see them on the reports. Public means the customer can see them when I print them out. So in this cases, maybe I don't want the customer to see them. They're just for internal tracking, right? So that's just an example, the example I'm using. But in some cases, folks need those custom fields to be shown to their customers. So I'm going to show you again a couple of invoices that I created, and I'm going to show you the data that I put in there. So I'm going to show you a couple of invoices. So for example, on this one I put rep Hector, state Georgia, source Google. On this one I put rep Maria, state Georgia, source Google. On this other one I put rep Hector, state Florida, source Google. And on this one I put rep Jose, state Georgia, source WOM. Word. That's my attempt to have a cool acronym for word of mouth. So when I do this, I can go into reports, and then I can do a sales. Where is that? Let me search it up here. I think it's sales customer. So I do sales by customer detail, and I pull up this report, sales by customer detail, and then I come up here where it says group by, and I select rep, and click on run. So now I got my total sales by rep. Or I come up here and put state, and then click run, and then I get my total sales by state. Or I click on source, and then I get my total sales based on where my customer came from. Now I wish there was more than 3 custom fields. Yes, I wish that you can program drop down boxes in these custom fields so the customers don't, I mean the end users don't inadvertently put something wrong or misspell something, because that will break the system. Yes, I wish that. And I also wish that there was a summary version of this report that I don't have to see all the details. Now, for that last wish, I can actually collapse each of these by just clicking on the little triangle, and you do kind of get what looks like a summary report, a sales by source in this case. Or if I go by state and click on run, I have to then manually collapse each one, but I do get what looks and smells like a summary report. The problem is that even if I were to save the customization on this one, and then let's say I'm gonna click on replace, and I were to, let's say, go out of it, go back to reports, click on my customized reports and pull the report again, they show up expanded. So the collapsing process is you manually have to sit there and click on them in order to make them collapse. So it's not, you can't automate a custom summary report, but this is the closest we get to a custom summary report in QuickBooks Online as of yet. So that's actually, I found that to be a pretty interesting insight about how that works. Now, the reclassified transactions feature in QuickBooks Online, it's only available for accountants, but there's a hidden feature for that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. On this screen, what I'm going to show you, it's how to bookmark particular functions. So for example, right now, if I wanted to reclassify a transaction, I would click on the toolbox and click on reclassify transactions. That's actually a pretty simple, fast process. However, everything in QuickBooks Online based on the URL can be bookmarked. So if I click on that little tiny star that's on the right of the URL, if I click on that, it creates a bookmark. So I can call this Reclassify Transactions, and then click done. Now another way of doing it is clicking on the little 3 dots there, and then clicking on bookmarks and click bookmark this page. They both do the exact same thing, so you can do either one. Okay, so you can go each way. But then what ends up happening is now you're going to see on the top left of the screen, hopefully you can see it right there, really small, right under the URL, that's in there. So it doesn't matter where I am, so I can be in banking, I can click really quickly there and it'll take me straight into reclassify transactions. So I can do that with everything. Like I can be on the let's say on the reports menu, and I'm going to click on recommend, and then I'm going to click on balance sheet, for example, I can actually bookmark this balance sheet. So I can click on the bookmark menu, and I can call this uh, balance sheet, and then click on done. And what's really neat about this, it doesn't matter which client I'm in. So I'm going to switch to another client, for example. I'm going to go into this client. So I can switch back and forth different clients, and I can click on reclassify transactions, and it'll take me straight there. So the bookmarks are not client specific, they're actually broad. They work on every single client. Now there's one little tiny nuance. You're not gonna be too happy about this, but when you bookmark reports, the title of the report or the company name also it's part of the bookmark. So there's one little tiny trick that I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to click on the three dots on the top right, click on bookmarks, and then click on, where do I go edit my bookmarks? Actually, I'm going to right click on the bookmark and click on edit is where it is, sorry. You're going to see on the URL, and this is really hard to see, right, because it's really, really small, but you're going to see on the URL, and you can actually scroll, you're going to be able to see somewhere in there as part of the URL is the report title. So if you don't want to memorize the report title as part of your bookmarking because you're going to use the same report across multiple customers, you're actually going to have to find in that URL somewhere the code for reports. And that's going to be easy to find if you because this report is called QBOA Plus account. So I'll be able to find it real quick. And there it is. Whoops. Let's see. Let me search it again. Okay. So this is called header. You're going to see it. Header company. So you're going to see right here where it says company name, and you're going to see the title. So all you have to do is delete that from the first ampersand to the last part of the title. And I'm going to just show you real quick. And this is kind of an advanced trick, and definitely it's going to be worth it watching the recording to kind of follow this one. But if I delete that as part of the URL and then click on save, I'll show you real quick. When I click on balance sheet again, because I didn't have as part of the URL the title, it will now bring in the actual title of my customer. So I know that was kind of a doozy, but I think it's an important insight around bookmarking URLs. So that's actually a really important one. Okay, and some of the interesting things you can do around that is you can create folders. So for example, let me do the same thing with the profit and loss. So I'll pull up a profit and loss, and I want to bookmark the P&L as well, and I'll call this one P&L. Hit done. What I can do is now is I can right click on these and click on add folder, and I can call this reports, for example, and then hit add, and then I can click and drag those into that reports folder, and then all of a sudden I actually have what looks like a trying to drop it in there, what looks like a drop down menu. So you actually click on that, you're going to see a drop down menu there, so I can have all my reports that I pull up across all my customers. And again, as I mentioned, this is not per company file. You can go across multiple company files and use these shortcuts. Again, they're not hidden features, but kind of hidden from plain sight. Okay, now let's move on to reclassify transactions, and this is a tool that is available for all customers, and they can reclassify transactions in batch. And if you've never seen this before, I think that you're gonna be probably more scared than happy about it. Okay, let me go into QuickBooks Online sample file for this. So I'm gonna go to QuickBooks Online sample file because I don't want to reclassify anything on any of my real accounts. So I'm gonna pull up a sample file real quick. And while this pulls up, let me see what other questions I can answer. So someone says, how do I change the title again? Okay, so I can't explain that over, but basically you have to go into the URL itself, and you have to find a company name, and you have to delete it from the URL path. So QuickBooks doesn't use a fixed one, a one that's fixed in there. Let's see. Can you pull up reports even if you're offline? So the answer is no. You have to be connected to QuickBooks online in order for the reports to work. So just because I bookmark them doesn't necessarily store the information there. Okay, so let me show you this screen. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you something that it doesn't feel natural, doesn't feel like it's supposed to be there, but once you see it, it is there. So I'm gonna click on expenses, and this screen actually allows you to reclassify things pretty easily. So for example, if this particular transaction, credit card expense, quickie clean car wash, is supposed to be something else, like let's say, do we have any equity accounts in here? Let's say, for example, this one's supposed to be job materials. You can literally just change it there. There's no warning sign. There's no are you sure? There is no save. It lets you do it automatically. So one of the things that I do, especially if I got customers that are not that good at this, I log in under their user. I come into the screen. I click on the gear menu. I click on show more, and I take away categories. So actually check off category from their options. That way they don't even get the option to see that, because this is way too much power to give to a untrained QuickBooks user. That's there. That's in every single QuickBooks file as of now. That's sitting there in every single QuickBooks file. So that's already there. But something that I'll show you that's kind of interesting is being able to batch reclassify from here. So for example, let's say we got these transactions from Hicks Hardware. Let's say I wanted to reclassify these. So one of the really cool things about this screen is I can click on filter, and then I can click on payee. I can type Hicks Hardware. I can say, for example, for only for this month, and click on apply. Okay, there wasn't any for this month, so let me do this year and click on apply, and this will show me all the transactions that are currently classified to Hicks Hardware. Now I'm going to enable the category screen option again, just so we know exactly what we're looking at. And let's say, for example, these are being categorized all to job materials, but actually even look, this one's going into decks and patios, this one's going into sprinklers, this one's going into plants and soil. So that's actually, and this one's going to miscellaneous. So typical use case is, for example, we're not supposed to have different expense categories per vendor, and we want to fix that. So we can actually click on the select all button up here. So it's a little select all button, click on batch actions, and click on reclassify selected. Now all of these are showing under split. These wouldn't reclassify, so I would have to maybe organize these by category or something like that. Select all, and then I would unselect the ones that say split. Now the ones that say split are because of the transactions themselves are maybe using items, or there are some purchase orders, something that just doesn't cannot be reclassified. But most bills, expenses, and credit card expenses, like what we're seeing here, those can be reclassified. So once we select the ones we want to reclassify, we click on batch actions, click on recategorize selected, and then we pick, let's say, advertising, whatever it happens to be, click on apply, and then it reclassifies them all in one shot. Now, you can also go a different way. For example, I'm going to pull up a P&L real quick. And let's say that I'm looking at this category here called plants and soil. Actually, let's look at another one. Let's say another big one. Let's say we're looking at this one, repairs and maintenance. So I can do a different approach. I can go into expenses. I can go to filter, and instead of using payee, I'm gonna select all payee. But then under category, I'll put here, which one was it? Repairs and maintenance. I'll put repairs and maintenance, and click on apply, so that we see all the things that are currently under repairs and maintenance. And then possibly from here I can pick the ones that I want, the ones that I don't want. I can sort by date, by type. I can even filter, which was what's amazing about this is I can filter by transaction type. So if I only wanted to reclassify bills, for example, or something like that, so I can use multiple things here. What was it? I think it was repairs and maintenance. So I can use multiple transaction types, multiple categories to figure out exactly what I'm looking for, and then I can then select all and then categorize selected to whatever I want. So if you're an accounting professional that's using QuickBooks Online Accountant, you have the reclassify feature, and that works pretty well. But you actually don't get this amount of filters, and this may work in some cases, may work even better than the regular reclassify feature. So I wanted to at least show you, so you know the existence of that. Again, something that's not hidden, but it's pretty much away from plain sight. Now this is another interesting one. This one's called manage billable expense. So what you do is you use that path right there, qbo.intuit.com/app/manage billable expenses. It's right there on the handout. So when you go into that link, and you actually have to type it. So it's not a button you press. When you actually type it, it takes you to this screen. This is what I call a hidden screen. What this will do is, if I have any billable expenses that have not been converted into invoices yet, that means that we're basically getting, we have this pesky drawer coming up on the right side that keeps asking me to add billable expenses to invoices, and for whatever reason we're not going to do them. We can just pick a date and say, look, anything older than 9/30/2017, just get rid of. So I'll just pick a date, and then basically every single expense that was marked billable will now be unmarked billable. So I click on save, and it does it for all that. It doesn't do it for time entries, unfortunately, but it does do it for expenses. So they no longer, if I have something that was marked billable, it will still popping up and telling me to add it to the invoice. So that's again, that is truly a hidden feature, because you actually have to know this path for this to work. And the last one is this one. This one's called Purge Company. So if you add this to the path up there and you put app Purge Company, what will happen is QuickBooks will now ask you, hey, are you sure that you want to take all the contents of this QuickBooks file and delete them 100%? Okay, now I'm going to use a different login for that. So let me get back in here. So let me use it here. So I'm going to type app, and then I'll type Purge Company. No spaces. Purge Company. And then the minute you type that, now you're going to get a warning saying, hey, by the way, you're sure you want to delete all your accounts, all your items, all your transactions, and then click yes, and then you just type yes here, and then you click OK, and basically that exact QuickBooks file you were working on will be completely deleted, and it'll be as if it's a brand new fresh account. Now, a lot of folks, what they do is they'll just create a new QuickBooks file and cancel the other one. You can do that, but particularly for folks that, for example, the ones that got a special promotional price on that account, they can delete the file and keep that promotional price. So if you're paying some really a low fee for whatever reason, because you bought them in a group, or you bought the 5 for 5 special, or you got 50% for a whole year, and creating a new file doesn't give you as good of a deal, then you can use the purge to delete them. Again, I don't know when you will need this. I've used it a couple of times, and I used it specifically for a customer that we got them on QuickBooks Online. We converted them to desktop. About 70 days went by, and they made a complete mess, and QuickBooks Desktop was updated, and we basically purged it, and that this allowed us to re-upload from desktop. Okay, so the 60-day limitation, it's there by default, but by using the Purge Company button, it extends the limitation to nothing, and it will purge whatever QuickBooks file you happen to be in at the moment. All right, so I think that was it. Okay, so that was everything. So let me run the last polling question. Okay, and then while the polling question is out, I'll try to see what questions I can answer. We have a whole bunch of them. So let's see. Somebody says, what's the advantage of doing this? So again, if you want to re-upload your QuickBooks Desktop, or you want to keep the promotional price on that QuickBooks Online account, and just delete the data, that could work. So the purging basically resets it from 0. Somebody says, hide unbilled expenses. Does that work for billable items? No, it's only billable expenses. Doesn't work for items. It doesn't work for timesheet items. Why they did this, I don't know. Can't. Sometimes I don't understand even why Intuit does what they do sometimes. Can you back up QuickBooks Online and restore it to desktop? The answer is yes. There's a process to do that. Let's see. How do we access the slideshow? That's right there on the handout section. Just click on the handout section and download it, or on the chat section, I actually put a link where you can download it. What's the URL for clearing Unbillable? So just download the handouts. It's there. It's in there. Let's see. You just need 3 polling questions for your CPA certificate, right? The answer is yes. Is this batch uncleared billable expenses available in QuickBooks Desktop? The answer is no. No, not available in desktop. For desktop, you would have to actually create an invoice and invoice them out, and then delete the invoice if you wanted to do that. Let's see. Let's see. Going through the questions here, we still got plenty of minutes left here, so I'm going to try to answer them again. Let's see. Can you send the URLs? Yeah, so the URLs are inside the handouts. So definitely take a look at the handout for that. Then I got some question about rental property. Sorry, I can't get into that right now. How does ACE work? ACE reporting. Okay, so you should get an email from Intuit at some point sending you the link of where you go report it, and it's all self-reporting. You basically log in and select the episode that you're working with, which is this one. This one will show up, I think, tomorrow because Intuit has to refresh their database. You select it and you add it. It's all self-reporting. Intuit still gets a database of who logged in, but that's only for audit purposes. Let's see. Is there a way to batch close open purchase orders? QuickBooks Desktop has that. QuickBooks Online does not. You still have to close one at a time. So absolutely one at a time. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it. That's it with the questions. So I'll wrap up, close the last polling question, and I'll share the results real quick. So 0% knew all this content already. So I think I at least achieved the goal of making sure that 100% of you learned at least one thing new. So quite proud of that. All right, so let's finish up with the slides then. So some of the upcoming episodes we recommend. Obviously, the next one coming up is going to be an ACE course as well. It will be on QuickBooks Desktop. I haven't come up with a topic yet. Literally, I don't do QB Power Hour for a living, so I come up with these things in the middle of my regular work schedule. So I don't know exactly what what that will look like, but it will be advanced and hopefully it'll be something new. Then on November 2nd, we'll do a T-Sheets deep dive into scheduling and kiosk time clock, which are the two features that are kind of that are very underutilized in the T-Sheets world, and I think makes T-Sheets a really powerful, really powerful feature. Then on 11:30, we think we're gonna do a sort of a practice management episode, trends in the accounting technology space, because Michelle and I will be coming back from QuickBooks Connect, and we'll kind of summarize everything new that we have learned from QuickBooks Connect, or maybe anything exciting that QuickBooks has in the pipeline. Then on December 14th, we'll do a top QuickBooks and accountants apps for 2017. Michelle and I are still compiling a list of like our favorite apps, and both for QuickBooks and not for QuickBooks that work for accountants. And then quite likely, if Michelle and I are not traveling on the 4th of January, we'll start back up in 2018 with some sort of end of the year payroll and 1099 topic, which is probably as relevant as it gets on January 4th. Again, thanking our sponsors, T-Sheets, #1 rated app in apps.com. Create, manage, and approve your timesheets from any device. Check them out in tsheets.com. Arrow Workflow, the only workflow manager for pro advisors by pro advisors, integrates with QuickBooks Online. And HopDoc, my favorite document aggregation app to automatically get bills and receipts and check images and statements from my client. Once again, thank you very much for joining us in QB Power Hour. Join our Facebook group. Just search for QB Power Hour in Facebook. Join the Facebook group, and this is where we continue the conversation. This is where people ask questions about what they learned and maybe other QuickBooks things, and also join Michelle's successful QuickBooks consultant group. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.